think the one that I'd really pick out is this very definitive effort to undermine the existing kind of Western alliance, the NATO alliance, the North Atlantic alliance between America and Europe. And that is something that's been really, really consistent from the very first days of the second administration through to J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference, haranguing European leaders with some justification about things like low levels of defence spending and really downplaying the future of the Atlantic Alliance, through to the recent publication of the National Security Strategy, which again had extremely alarming language about really talking down the stability of Western Europe in a way that would be palatable to people in the Kremlin. Just extraordinary to see that in a US administration policy document, and like right through to recent days, really, where President Trump, as far as Ukraine goes, places very little store by the objections raised by European leaders, although actually that's one of the few things that's pushing him to reach a fair settlement for Ukraine. So for me, that's an incredibly important trend story through the year. It's not just kind of the individual beats of it, but it's just the fact that it's almost unthinkable. If you had low expectations at the start of this year about where the North Atlantic Alliance would be by the end of this year, we've undershot those quite considerably. It's been probably worse than we could have imagined or feared on January 21st, when President Trump came into office.
Okay, but arguably now Europe is taking seriously its defense budgets. There's talk of potential mandatory service.
National service, including the UK. Yeah, but as ever with President Trump, he's not wrong. He's not wrong about everything. He is right. As I said this, alluded to this earlier. He's not wrong that European defence spending in the last 2 decades has been backsliding in an unforgivable and dangerous way, and he's justified in pointing that out. Whether the remedies that he's chosen to take are the right ones, well, that's a separate question. But he's not wrong, given what's happened in Ukraine and given the extreme alarm showed by other countries in NATO border on former Russian states, nervousness in the Baltic states. You were in the Baltic states earlier this summer, Poland, other places who are extremely nervous about Russian expansionism. President Trump, you may disagree with him, but he's not making a completely unreasonable point about the state of NATO defence spending. Things like the German army, which is in such a terrible state it can barely deploy at all.